RWBY Beyond has officially released and finished. Since they're so short, I decided to cover them all in one video. But before that, I wanted to give an update on the current state of RWBY. We actually got some really good news. During the RWBY 10-year later livestream, it was stated that they have identified some great partners for RWBY to find a new home. And the creative team will still be working on the show as well. They'll be giving us some more concrete information in the coming weeks, so we still have to be patient. But to me, that is good news. It looks like RWBY will be making a comeback as long as things go well. So keep your fingers crossed, and let's get into episode 1 of RWBY Beyond. We open up with the junior detectives, a running gag since volume 2, and have continued in RWBY Chibi, following Sun and Neptune as they try and figure out what exactly happened to Team RWBY.
And John too, I guess.
And that's kind of the episode. They speculate on what happened, and of course, with the very limited information, nothing. No leads. They've run dry. Them aside though, we get to see a meeting of all the higher ups. Basically everyone we know, plus Raven, and we finally get a look at Headmaster Theodore. I'm not gonna lie, the dude looks good. I thought he'd be a bit older, but he looks like he's still in his prime. It definitely matches up with the descriptions of him in the book. But Raven is here. I had just assumed that she'd appeared to bring RWBY back, yet here it seems like she's actively working with them. Few possibilities on this. Either Yang's conversation with her back in volume 5 made her reflect and gave her a slight change of heart. I say slight because I believe that she'll always stick with her bandit tribe and that'll never change. Or Raven felt her connection break with Yang and is worried about her and wanted to know what happened, as she heard RWBY's message as well, so she knows that Salem was making moves on Atlas, and after her battle with them in Mistral, she probably knew that they would head to Atlas afterwards. But what I want to know, and this might be a little bit scary, is the timeline of events of when Port and Oobleck got to Vacuo. If Raven was there when Salem attacked Vale, if she was talking with Ty, who was where, and when. This does confirm that when Raven brought Team RWBY home and that Not to Crow, it wasn't their first interaction back. But we still don't have the context of Raven, and after the epilogue teaser, I'd hoped that we would get something. The episode concludes with us getting this mysterious person, with Sun saying that there's no way that it's the Summer Maiden. First off, despite Sun saying that it's not the Summer Maiden, I am not trusting the word of a goofball as gospel. So for now, this is probably the Summer Maiden. It's too early to confirm anything, but everyone I'd expect at this meeting is here. Ozpin, Theodore, Ro, Maidens, Glinda would be here if she wasn't busy. Rumpel is probably somewhere. That's Theodore's assistant for those who haven't read the books, but that's episode 1. I will say that I really enjoyed the impersonations this episode, especially Crow's. It was spot on, and Carrie did a great job with them.
I already told you, I wasn't even there. Plus, I don't talk to cops. Or whatever you two are. Ow!
Episode 2, John. I'm not gonna lie, this episode is actually pretty fire. We essentially follow John as he reflects on the events in the EA, trying to come to terms with what happened and what he's got to live with. Guys, John had an incredible journey in volume 9. He lived his entire life basically in isolation, away from his family and his friends. While he knew he would see them again, the mental torment that he went through isn't something that people should be taking lightly. And then at the end, to just be reverted back to your original self like it almost never happened, I'd have the same reaction as him. He lived a fairy tale, lived his life, went insane for a bit, but still came out alive. And honestly, he now has one of the most interesting character stories, and I'm grateful for this episode, especially his question,
Who is Jean now?
He decides to take comfort in another character who shares his experience, Oscar. I'm telling y'all, Oscar, actual MVP, and it's sad to watch this man slip up.
I've been the subject of a couple of fairy tales myself.
You mean Ozpin has, right?
Of course.
Their interaction, this therapy session almost, it's great. Two characters struggling physically and mentally with their identity. Oscar going from this little farm boy seeking guidance to him being looked at as an equal. He's grown so much. Of course, he had no choice to. As John retells his story, we do get a bit of cool information. Alex and Lewis are from a time before Huntsman and are from Vacuo, which, based on their clothing, I was really surprised by. I'm thinking they're from before the Great War, when Atlas was still colonizing Vacuo, because their outfits look too formal for typical Vacuan wear. Could they be royalty? It's hard to say. There's no information on it, so I don't know. Could be, probably not, but who knows. The last bit of this retelling is really wholesome though, with a shot of Alex, Lewis, John, and the rest of Juniper, including Pyrrha. God, I've missed her so much. The last time we saw her was in Volume 4. It's genuinely been too long, and I know that she'll stay in Juniper's hearts. Episode 3 brings us the adventures of Somewhat, and surprisingly, this is the longest episode of the bunch, with it being 6 minutes. We get to see the ever after our heroes have departed as we revisit each location. We first visit the Gentle Gems, as Somewhat tries to offer their help, but was rejected as the gems are working so hard so that they can go serve others, as that's all they want to do. They're just as simple as that. So, no problems at the gyms. So then we head over to the market area that we saw in episode 5. We spot the herbalist, but before that, this is such a cool dog roux hair. I don't know, some type of animal concoction. Looks really cool though. We spot the herbalist and he gives Somewhat a task, and they go off to enter the Crimson Keep. And this is my favorite part of the episode. The dialogue, the ambience, it's just all so great. Seeing the Red Prince from episode 3 to seeing him after being beaten by Team RWBY. And now he calmly invites Somewhat to play as the two just discuss their purposes. And Somewhat shares their experience and gives the prince some words of advice. Our little really grew up. The three depart from each other, where Somewhat and Juniper run into somebody. A portal that all of us should recognize appears.
When they saw someone that they were somewhat not prepared to see. You're back.
Now, someone only knows RWBY and John, so somehow, someway, we come back. Now I'm going to try to not go down a rabbit hole here and make this part too long, since we can always discuss this in a separate video. But what if time flows evenly between both places so they're parallel? Then this episode spends over the course of a week traveling from place to place. I can't really assume that they would do all of this in a single day, but I guess RWBY kinda did, unless time just flows differently between the two places. Whatever. They found a way back using the same portals. Currently, Salem has the relic of creation. I have questions. Perhaps this is just far into the future and the vacuole arc is already done? We somehow get the relic back and the plan calls for us to go back to the EA? To be honest, I always thought we would. I'd assume it'd be a huge waste of resources if we were just here for such a short amount of time. But there are just so many questions, not enough answers, and definitely not enough clues to go off of. To me, it's either RWBY or John. Somewhat didn't exactly interact with the rest of the team in their brief amount of time. RWBY is RWBY, and John was one who entrusted Juniper to Somewhat, so it has to be one of them. I've also seen a lot of people say that it's Neo. Somewhat never met Neo, and Somewhat vaguely had an inkling about RWBY, and Little had spent so much time with her. So Neo? Nah. I want it to be RWBY. So for now, it's RWBY for me. This is opening up a can of worms and I kind of love it. Episode 4 brings us to the last episode of RWBY Beyond. Boba, RWBY, and Yang. I know, they know. We finally get some one-on-one time with them, and it's very sweet, very relaxing and down to earth, exactly what I wanted, what I needed after all these years. Just the two of them being sisters. It starts out with Yang taking RWBY to a surprise place to hang out. With how these past few months have been, Yang's being a little awkward and RWBY is catching on to it. The two converse and oh my god, they actually brought back the chibi. I genuinely love it when they do that. It's so cute on RWBY. And we all can't help but notice the parallels between this conversation and the one that they had during the Beacon era during episode 2 and 3. But as sweet as this moment is, it does get interrupted as a crowd comes into contact with them, as RWBY is really famous.
You're the girl who sent the message, the one who brought the world together.
Oh my goodness, can we take a picture?
Eventually they leave, and the surprise is Boba. I was not expecting Boba to make an appearance in RWBY, and what's funnier is the stock images that they use here. The conversation turns to them talking about their past days, the better days, when they were just kids and they would get Boba with their dad. And speaking of dad, he's not here. Apparently Ty is off on a mission, so we know that he made it out of Vale. Yang is obviously upset as her parent isn't here for her, especially when she needs it. This leads Yang to talking about the events in the EA. It had a major effect on both of them, and Yang and RWBY start talking about the changes moving forward, and how RWBY is struggling with asking for help. Man, this reminds me of something. A leader who can't ask for help, which leads to consequences within their team? As a result, the two come up with a safe word whenever RWBY wants to ask for help.
Boba.
Yeah. Boba.
It's adorable. This is what I missed. RWBY and Yang being all lovey and caring for each other. The slow moments that we actually need. And for us to leave off on this, I enjoy it. Ending with our first two mains. While it's not the full 4, RWBY and Yang's time here is enjoyable. I love it. And overall, with the 4 episodes that we got with RWBY Beyond, I think it was a good ride. I think RWBY and John had my favorite episodes. Before all of this, I was expecting more hard-hitting information. But with what we got and these circumstances around the team during this time, I'm happy with this, and I'm glad to see RWBY make a return.